On. All right, so we're up to chapter 9. If you remember, last week we were discussing the Navi. That's what we're discussing now, the Navi. And the Rambam made a point in chapter 9, Halacha Aleph, Halacha Beis at the end, where he said that if a Navi, if we do not listen to the Navi and we elect to just ignore him, so we said that there's Misa Bidei Shamayim for the people. Okay, if a Navi is a true Navi, and remember what the Rambam's criteria was, is that he performs some kind of a mofes or an os, and most importantly, he has a reputation as a good guy. Right? Remember, if a guy doesn't have a reputation and he's not well known, so we're a little suspicious. But if someone passes the smell test of a Navi and the people do not listen to him, the pasuk says, Anochi edrosh mi'imo. Right? Or the whole pasuk is Vahaya ha'isha shelo yishma el divrei el devarai asher yedaber b'shmi Anochi edresh mi'imo. If you don't listen to this Navi, I will seek retribution from him, which means Misa b'dei shamayim. Okay, so the Rambam, we're going to start on in Halacha Gimel, chapter 9 continues and says that point. What if the Navi gives Nevi'us and doesn't even listen to his own prophecy? All right, or the Hakovesh Nevuaso, someone who hides. Right, the word Kovesh means literally to cover up. Like we have Kovesh Schar Sachir, someone who doesn't pay his workers on time. That's called Kovesh. So here the Navi hides and does not listen to the word that was given to him and runs away, a la Yonah, right, on the boat. So Chayiv Misa B'dei Shemayim. Technically, Yonah was Chayiv Misa B'dei Shemayim. And I think he, from when I remember the story, right, he did not have smooth sailing. You like that one? Okay. Ubishloshta Nemar. So in all these three, it says Anochi Edreshimo. A, one who does not listen to the Navi. B, a Navi himself who doesn't listen to himself. Or if he runs away. Right? Those three people are Chayiv Misa B'dei Shamayim, Shenemar Anochi Edresh Me'imo. V'chen im yomar lanu hanavi shenodo lanu shehu navi la'avor alachas mikol mitzvahs amor b'Torah. What if the Navi says that I'm going to prophesize to be over one of the mitzvos? His prophecy is, we are not going to do this mitzvah today. Right? He says there is no mitzvah of tefillin from here on in. Pick one mitzvah at random. All right? Oh, al mitzvahs harbe. Ben Kalos Ben Chamurs. He says there's no more Shabbos, there's no more Yontif, right? He just eliminated 12 mitzvos, right, in one, right? Ben Chamuros, it doesn't matter if it's a Kal, it doesn't matter if it's Chamur. Lefi Sha'a, mitzvah lishmolo. So the key word over here is Lefi Sha'a, okay? We're going to see soon that you are allowed to do what's called the Horas Shah, which is temporarily suspend one of the mitzvos. Okay? V'chen lamadnu rishonim mipi hashmua v'cholim yomer lecha hanavi avor al divrei Torah ke'Eliyahu b'hara Karmel shmalo. You have to listen to him if he says we're going to suspend and change this mitzvah only temporarily. That's what the key word over here is. Temporarily. Okay? Like, what's the prime example of Eliyahu Bahara Carmel? Okay, because Eliyahu, did some things that were illegal by doing his famous, right, the story of Malachim, where he goes up against the Nevi'e Baal, right, and it was like a competition, right, to see whose korban would be accepted, and Eliyahu committed a lot of things that were illegal to do regarding korbanos. But nevertheless, it was a horasha to show that we are the true religion. So therefore, he could commit those violations. Shmalo, listen to the Navi. Chutz me'avodas kochavim. The Rambam says there's one exception that even if the Navi says violate this, even for one day, you can't do, and that is avodas kochavim. You will never ever be someone who says commit avodas kochavim for one day just to prove a point. That can't happen. That's the one exception. Hu sheyeh hadavar lefi shah. Getting back to the general rule, if it's lefi shah, if it's instance specific, then we say it's okay. Kagon, we're going to mention again, Eliyahu Bahara Carmel, Shehikriv Ola B'chutz, V'Yushalayim Nivcheres L'kach, V'Hamakriv B'chutz, Chayev Kares. Okay, so what exactly happened at Eliyahu at Har Carmel? So we know that he bought a Korban Ola, right? And he poured the water on it, and nevertheless the fire still consumed it. But we're going to learn in Zvachim, and the next perek, there's an entire week, if you're following in Daf Yomi, that discusses the prohibition of bringing a korban outside of Yerushalayim. There's many, many, many halachos regarding it. It's a whole week's worth of Daf Yomi, and that's exactly what he did wrong. He bought a korban outside of the Beis Hamikdash. That's a no-no, right? You're chayiv kares, right? Remember, it's a violation to bring chulin inside the Azara, and it's a violation to bring a korban outside the Azara. Okay? Both are chayiv kares. Shehu navi mitzvah lishmo'olo. But because Eliyahu was a navi, right? Very, very top-notch navi at that. So you have to listen to him. Therefore, this is the paradigm example to show that in this specific case, you have to listen. The Gambazeh Nemar Elav Tishma'un. But the Rambam quotes this pasuk that you should listen to the Navi. The Ilu Shalu as Eliyahu va'omer lo hechnakor masha kasav v'torah. If the people would have said, "Hey Eliyahu, I understand you want to have a competition with Nevi'ei Habal to show off that our God is king," right? Remember how it ends? Hashem hu Elokim, Hashem hu Elokim. What we say on Yom Kippur after davening, that's what the Navi, I believe it's the Haftorah for Kitisa, right? That's how it ends. The Haftorah for Kitisa ends, Hashem hu Elokim, that our God is great, right? And that proved that our Korban was accepted and the Baal wasn't. So if they were to say, "Hey Eliyahu, how are you violating this lav?" It's not only a lav, you're chayiv kares, right? How are you bringing the korban outside? It's a no-no, right? Because it says pen ta'aleh ulasacha b'chol makom, right? That's the pasuk that is that precedes the prohibition of bringing korbanos outside of the temple. Haya omer lo nemar ela hamakriv b'chutz la'olam chayiv kares k'mo shetzivah Moshe. No. That's only if it's a permanent. If you decree that permanently korbanos will be brought outside of the temple, that's the kares that Moshe was talking about. Aval, but Eliyahu said, "Ani akriv hayom b'chutz b'dvar Hashem kidei lahachish nevi'ei habal." I am going to do a once in a generation, right? Exclusion. Only once in a generation that we're going to have to do this. So that's why it was permitted. And the Rambam repeats himself and he says, from here we learn that if it's lefi shah, if it's a temporary suspension of the rule, it's a mitzvah to listen to it, even if it contradicts the Torah. But if the Navi says from here on in, there's no more sacrificing in the temple, it's only going to be outside, that is completely uprooting one of the mitzvos, and that's a no-no, and that is a misa of chenek, shenamar b'Torah lanu v'neinu ad olam, right? That the Torah says, "Hanistaros Hashem Elokeinu v'hanigos lanu," right? These laws are always going to be for us and forever in perpetuity. Okay, so that is number 3. Halacha dalid. V'chen im akar davar midvarim shalomadim v'ishmua. So all of these things that we're talking about are what we call deoraisas. What if the Navi says, this year we're not going to do Mikras Megillah? That's it. We're going to take a year off from Megillas Esther. And he gives a reason. So that's called violating a Durabanan. So are you allowed to violate a Durabanan if a Navi says to do it? So that's what the Rambam's going to discuss now. V'chenim akar davar midvarim shalamanu peyashmua osha amar bedin medinei Torah Hashem tiv lanu shadin kachu v'halacha kedivrei ploni. What if he says to violate the Navi says to violate a din d'Rabbanan, or he says regarding one of the Oraisa laws that we're going to do such and such according to one opinion, okay, as opposed to someone else's opinion, like if it's a machlokus about something, right? Harei ze navi sheker v'yechnak. That is called a navi sheker, okay, a false prophet, and he is nechnak, and his penalty is chenek, strangulation. Afal pi she'asa os, okay, even though he does some kind of miracle, right? Sheharei ba lahachish haTorah, because again, you can't contradict the Torah, except, as we learned, if it's l'tzorach hasha'a, if it's a special exception, then it's permitted. All right, and if you ba lahachish haTorah, if you contradict the Torah, she'amra lo b'shamayim hi, because the Torah says it is not in heaven. Right? We learn over there that we don't listen to Baskol. Remember the Gemara in Bava Metzia 59? That is the source that we don't listen to a Baskol. Even if a heavenly voice comes down from heaven and says, do this, believe it or not, we don't do that. And if you remember the Gemara in Bava Metzia, Pei Hey, I think, or Pei Vav. Sorry, it's Pei Vav. Says that there was a time when we even argued against God. Right? There was a machlokas between HaKadosh Baruch Hu and Rabba Bar Chana. Right? If you remember the story, we're not going to get into it, but if you look at Bava Metzia 86, you'll even remember that we paskined against God in a specific law regarding negat saras, if the seis comes before the baheres, if you remember that discussion. But anyways, sorry for that tangent. So, aval lefisha shomen lo bakol. So the Rambam ends off by saying, if it's lefisha, as he said already twice, if it's temporary, if it's a very, very special exception to prove something, or for a Kiddush Hashem, or whatever that exception is going to be, then we break the rules. But we don't even break, the Rambam says, we don't even break a D'Rabbanan. Okay, we'll do one last one to finish the perek. Bamed Dvarim Omer B'Shar Mitzvos. Everything that we said is regarding 99% of the mitzvos. Aval bavodas kochavim. The Rambam is repeating himself for a third time, right? But when it comes to avodas kochavim, there are no exceptions ever. Ein shomen lo, we don't listen to a navi, v'afilu lefi shah. Even if it's temporary, v'afilu asa osos umoftim gedolim. What if a person parted the Atlantic Ocean and performed all these miracles and did things that we've never seen before, even without AI, right? Still, that's not enough. If a person does a crazy miracle and says, see what I did? I did this miracle because God told me that we're going to do avodah zarah for 1 hour tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock. The Rambam says a guarantee that can't happen. No matter what this Navi does, he could turn the world over, right? But we never listen to him when it comes to avodah zarah. And this is what the pasuk regarding the Navi Sheker and Parshas Re'eh is talking about. Lo tishma el divrei hanavi hahu. Do not listen to that Navi, come hell or high water. Kideber Sarah al Hashem Elokechem, because the Navi is saying things antithetical to God. What is the one example that's antithetical to God? Well, you could argue Gilur Arayos, Shvichas Damim, but it's really Avodah Zarah. Because if you don't believe in Avodah Zarah, then nothing else matters. Remember, that's how the Rambam started this whole book. He says, let's talk about God for a minute, right? So that's how the Rambam started. That you can't contradict God. Because what you're doing is you're contradicting the nevuah of Moshe. So you could say, well, didn't he just do a crazy miracle? He just parted the waters, for example. We say, no, he's still considered a Navi Sheker, even though he did his fancy miracles, and he is Chayav Chenek. All right, so that's the end of the ninth chapter.